Hi, this is Michelle Gullion from the National First Ladies Library. I'm the archivist and curator here. And today we want to wish every woman out there National Happy Equal Pay Day. On this special day, we wanted to do a special segment as we're doing these virtual segments here in Canton, Ohio, in support of all the museums and supporting our community and all of you out there in the nation who support the National First Ladies Library. We wanted to do this special segment on a very important letter that we have in our collection. It was written by First Lady Lucretia Garfield in 1882. And I'll get into that a little bit more in just a little bit. We'll talk about the letter that's very important to this day. I wanted to explain to you who Lucretia Garfield was. She was the wife of James Garfield. He was our 20th president, and he became president in 1880, and his vice president was Chester Arthur. His inauguration was March 1st of 1882, and in May of 1882, Lucretia was stricken with malaria. The Garfields had a physician, their own family physician, who was Dr. Susan Edson, and she was called to the White House. She cared for Lucretia while she was ill, and when Lucretia was feeling better, Dr. Edson suggested that she go to Elberon, New Jersey, to the seaside there and recoup and gain strength. And that's what she did. And President Garfield was finishing up his work, and he was looking forward to going to be with Lucretia in Elberon. He was getting ready to get aboard the train. He was going to stop at his alma mater, Williams College, and give a speech, and then he was going to join Lucretia, and he couldn't wait. He was so looking forward to seeing her. She'd been very, very ill, and she was doing so much better. He never made it to those destinations because that morning in the train station, he was shot by an assassin. He fell to the ground. He was instantly taken back to the White House. A group of physicians came and looked over the president. He was shot in the back, and unfortunately, they didn't wash their hands, and they put their fingers into the wound, which was excruciatingly painful for President Garfield, but it was also deadly to President Garfield. They never found the bullet, but what they did by sticking their unwashed fingers into the president's back, they infected him. And that is what President Garfield died from, very slowly. It took 79 days for him to die. And during those 79 days, he was in the White House. It was very, very hot. They drew the shades. They brought big blocks of ice, and they made these big fanning type with curtain type things to try to cool him down. There was a group of physicians that became quite involved in taking care of the president. In the 79 days that it took, the media was quite involved in this very sad, slow demise of the president. And they hoped for the best at first. And so every day, a spokesman would come out from the White House to the media and give an update. And he would tell them all the various things that were going on with the president. They would tell him that his vitals, such as his pulse, his temperature, his respirations, what he'd been able to eat, if he'd been able to eat, had he slept well. And they gave reports morning, noon, and night. It consumed our country with concern for the president and his family. Lucretia came back from Elberon immediately, went into the White House, and she became part of the drama. She was this rock that she always was. But the country was really getting an insight into who Lucretia Garfield was, and they were very concerned about her as well as the family. There were 6 doctors in particular who became kind of the rock stars, you might say, of this drama that was going on. Dr. Bliss was the top surgeon, and then they all went down from there. One of the physicians, not mentioned very often, but who makes a lot of the drawings, is Dr. Edson. She is there. You often see her fanning with a fan. Lucretia, like I said, is really brought into this drama. She is comforting very much to President Garfield as he wastes away, and she is his rock. She is the cheerleader. She does whatever the physicians want. She is hands-on. She's helping mix the potions, whatever she can do. She never gives up hope that he can be saved. And the country becomes quite concerned about what's going to happen to Lucretia and the 5 children that the president and she has, and the president's mother who lives with them. When it becomes pretty clear that the president is not going to make it, they decide that they're going to get him to the seaside, get him out of this oppressive heat in Washington, D.C. So they put him on a train and have a special car made with a special bed made for him. They send him up to Elberon, and the workers for the New Jersey Railroad Company even extend the tracks and build the tracks so that they come out to the cottage, and so that the president doesn't have that far to go when he's put in to the cottage there by the seaside. And that's where President Garfield spends the last few days of his life, and that's where he passes on. The country is just in terrible mourning when President Garfield dies. He dies September 17th, 1881. And the American people have been sending funds to Lucretia Garfield, and she and the family are given over $300,000 by the American people, and that's in 1881 dollars. So Lucretia Garfield is a very wealthy woman after in her widowhood, and she does a lot of wonderful things with that money, and to keep her husband's name out in the public eye. There's a committee in Congress that gather together to pay the bills of the president during his illness. And one of those things is to pay the doctors. And as you see in this piece here from the Democratic Northwest in December of 1881, that the physicians are going to be paid, and Dr. Bliss, of course, is the top doctor. He's being paid the most. At this point, he's being paid $6,000. And then you see that it goes down to Doctors Agnew and Hamilton making $5,000, Rayburn, Boynton getting $4,000. And Dr. Susan Edson is mentioned in this here, but she's only getting $3,000. Lucretia Garfield writes to Judge Ezra Taylor, and Judge Taylor was the head of the committee who was paying the bills for Garfield's illness. He is from the Cleveland area. He was actually replaced Garfield in Congress when he became elected to president. So he was a very well-respected judge and congressman. He served there in Congress until 1893 when he returned to Warren, Ohio, and finished his career there. He had a daughter, and his only daughter, was Harriet Taylor Upton. And Mrs. Upton was a very, very famous and strong suffragist in the suffrage movement. If you go to Warren, Ohio, you can visit the Harriet Taylor Upton house, which Judge Taylor gave to his daughter. In February 21st, Lucretia Garfield wrote this letter to the Honorable Ezra Taylor. Dear friend, the privilege you gave me in your former letter to make any suggestions confidentially to you as chairman of the committee to audit the expenses of General Garfield's illness, I now wish to take by calling your attention to a matter that may not have occurred to you. The Saturday papers assume to give the amounts decided upon by the committee, and I notice Dr. Rayburn is given $10,000 and Dr. Edson $5,000. This, I suppose, is granted on the ground that she was nurse and Dr. Rayburn one of the surgeons, without taking into account the fact that Miss Edson is a practicing physician of quite as much celebrity in the city of Washington as is Dr. Rayburn, and her practice was given up as entirely as was his. As far as real service was concerned, that rendered by Dr. Rayburn bore no comparison to Miss Edson's, and it seems to me only justice that this discrimination be not made in favor of Dr. Rayburn. I am sure you have had many embarrassments over the adjustments of these claims, and I make the suggestion to not annoy you, but simply with the feeling that it may have been overlooked. I have heard nothing from Miss Edson or her friends, and she may not raise the question. It seems to me not quite just, and you will pardon my interference, I trust, and grant that my name be not mentioned even in committee. Very, very sincerely, your friend, Lucretia R. Garfield. In the New York Times, the headlines read that Dr. Bliss was granted $25,000 for his services, as that Doctors Agnew and Hamilton $15,000, and the doctors Rayburn, Boynton, and Edson all got $10,000. So who is Dr. Susan Edson? Dr. Edson was born in 1823, and she was one of the first women to graduate from a medical school in this country. She graduated March 1st, 1854, from the Cleveland Homeopathic College. She set up her practice there in Cleveland until the beginning of the Civil War. She decided to go down to Washington, D.C., where she enlisted in the nursing corps, and she served our country in that fashion until the end of the war. After the end of the war, she decided to stay in Washington, D.C. There was so much need there. And she partnered with another female physician, Dr. Caroline B. Winslow. And the two of them had a practice that they set up, and they focused mainly on women's health issues, especially African American women there living in Washington, D.C. I also wanted to let you know that Dr. Susan Edson and Dr. Winslow were also supporters of the women's suffrage movement, along with Dr. Mary Walker, who was the only woman to ever receive the Medal of Honor for her services as a surgeon in the Civil War. They wrote a missive to Congress in 1866 called The Right of Women to Vote. Lucretia Garfield lived another 37 years. She raised her children, all 5 children, and educated them, and they were all amazing children in and of themselves, had wonderful careers and did wonderful things in this country. Lucretia also added a presidential library to their house in Mentor, Ohio. And if you go to Mentor, Ohio, don't miss the James A. Garfield presidential site. Lucretia, you can see a lot of her handiwork there, the beautiful things that she added on to the site there in honor of President Garfield. She died March 14th, 1918 at the age of 85 in South Pasadena, California, where she was spent her winters in her later years. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Happy Equal Pay Day to all women, and be safe and take care. Thank you.